The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched far beyond what human eyes could easily see. Floating platforms held representatives from dozens of alien species, each more advanced than the last. Ambassador Hyun-Ki Kim stood at the center, podium, holding a small data pad that contained humanity's formal application for membership in the galactic community. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before the laughter began. It started with a low rumbling sound from the Vorthak delegation. These towering beings stood 12 feet tall, their bodies covered in crystalline plates that shifted color with their emotions. Right now, those plates glowed bright orange with amusement. The sound they made resembled rocks grinding together, but Hyun-Ki's translator clearly identified it as laughter. Soon, other species joined in. The Nemari floated in their environmental suits, their gaseous forms pulsing with what could only be described as joy. Even the usually serious Kaloth collective began making their unified clicking sounds that meant they found something funny. Council Speaker Veltarin raised one of his 4 arms for silence. His species, the Althari, had been running the Galactic Council for over 2,000 years. They looked almost human except for their pale blue skin and the fact that they had no hair anywhere on their bodies. Ambassador Kim, Veltarin said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's translation system. We have reviewed your species application. We must say it has provided considerable entertainment during our morning briefings. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Hyun-Ki felt his jaw tighten, but he maintained his diplomatic composure. He had expected this reaction. Earth's scientists had warned him that humanity would likely be seen as primitive compared to species that had been traveling between stars for millennia. Speaker Veltarin, Hyun-Ki replied, humanity may be new to interstellar travel, but we believe we have much to offer the galactic community. This statement triggered another wave of amusement. A Vorthak named Korthanel stepped forward on his platform. His crystal plates had shifted to a bright yellow color that the translator indicated meant he was about to say something he considered particularly clever. Tell us, little human, Korthanel said, his voice sounding like wind through a cave. What exactly do you think you can offer us? We have seen your military capabilities. You still use kinetic weapons that fire metal projectiles. Your largest ships move using controlled explosions. Your people cannot even agree on how to govern a single planet. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as cosmic giggling. Representatives from species humanity had never even heard of joined in the mockery. Hyun-Ki noticed that every single one of them had holographic displays showing images from Earth. Videos of human wars, environmental damage, and political conflicts played on loop for their entertainment. Your species? Added Nemari Representative Zephi, their voice coming from their suit speakers. Wages war against itself over imaginary lines drawn on maps. You destroy your own world for temporary economic gain. You cannot even decide what constitutes basic rights for your own kind. Kaloth Prime Speaker clicked forward, all 1,000 members of their collective speaking in perfect unison. Our analysis indicates that humans are incapable of logical decision-making. Your neural patterns show excessive chaos and unpredictability. These traits make you unsuitable for civilized society. Veltarin nodded gravely, though Hyun-Ki could see amusement still dancing in his large, dark eyes. The Council has therefore decided to grant humanity protected species status. You will be placed under the guidance and supervision of the Hegemony Coalition. Hyun-Ki felt his heart sink. Protected species status meant exactly what it sounded. Like humanity would be treated like children or worse, like pets. They would have no voting rights in the Council, no say in their own affairs when it came to interstellar matters, and no access to advanced technologies except what the hegemony decided they could handle. Furthermore, Veltarin continued, Earth will be designated as a resource extraction world. The hegemony will oversee mining operations to harvest your planet's rare minerals. Humans will be employed in these operations as manual laborers. In exchange, you will receive basic medical technology and educational materials to help civilize your species. The word civilize hit Hyun-Ki like a physical blow. Around the chamber, he could see alien representatives nodding their approval. To them, this was generous. They were offering to help primitive humans become slightly less primitive. With respect, Speaker Viltaran, Hyun-Ki said, fighting to keep his voice steady. Humanity requests full membership status. We understand we may need time to integrate with galactic society, but we are capable of self-governance. This statement triggered the loudest laughter yet. Several species actually applauded, their various appendages creating a cacophony of clapping, clicking, and grinding sounds. Corthanel's crystal plates had turned a bright purple color that indicated extreme amusement. Self-governance? Your species cannot govern itself on a single world without constant warfare. How could you possibly participate in decisions affecting thousands of worlds and billions of beings? Your emotional responses alone, added the Kaloth Collective, disqualify you from serious participation in galactic affairs. Logic and reason guide civilized species. Humans are guided by primitive instincts and irrational feelings. Veltaran raised his arms again for silence. The decision is final. Ambassador Kim, you may inform your world government that hegemony, mining operations will begin within one standard galactic month. Human workers should report to designated collection points in your major cities. Compliance is not optional. As the council session ended, aliens began filing out of the chamber, many still chuckling among themselves. Hyun-Ki heard fragments of conversation as they passed. Did you see the recordings from their latest war? One voice said. They actually used flying machines to drop explosives on cities. Primitive beyond belief, another replied. Though I admit their unpredictability makes them somewhat entertaining to observe. My offspring find human behavior fascinating, a third voice added. They watch Earth broadcasts as educational entertainment about the dangers of uncontrolled evolution. Hyun-Ki stood alone in the vast chamber as the last alien delegates departed. His hands shook slightly as he gathered his materials. Everything humanity had worked for, everything they had hoped to achieve had been dismissed with laughter. The worst part was knowing they were right about some things. Humans did wage war against each other. They did make emotional decisions that defied logic. They had damaged their own planet and continued to disagree about almost everything. But as Hyun-Ki walked toward the exit, he thought about the scientists and engineers back on Earth who had built the ship that brought him here. He thought about the diplomats who had crafted humanity's application, knowing the odds were against them but trying anyway. He thought about the billions of people on Earth who had voted to reach for the stars despite knowing they might be rejected. Maybe the aliens were right that humans were primitive, but they had missed something important. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting against impossible odds and somehow surviving. Every human alive was descended from ancestors who had refused to give up when logic said they should. As his ship left the Galactic Council station, Hyun-Ki activated his communication system to send a message back to Earth. General Park Dong-hyun would want to know the results immediately. Mission Control, this is Ambassador Kim, he said into the transmitter. Council session completed. Request immediate conference with General Park and the Defense Committee. He paused, looking out at the stars that humanity had dreamed of reaching for thousands of years. Tell the General that we have been classified as a protected species. Hegemony forces will begin resource extraction operations within 30 days. Another pause. Also tell him that they think we're too primitive and emotional to be a threat. As Earth grew larger in his view screen, Hyun-Ki allowed himself a small smile. The aliens had made their first mistake. They assumed that because humans were primitive, they were harmless. They had never considered that maybe, just maybe, being primitive might actually be an advantage. The universe had laughed at humanity today, but Hyun-Ki suspected that very soon, the laughter would stop. Dr. Kang Yuna pressed her hand against the scanner and waited for the heavy metal door to slide open. The facility hidden beneath the old Seoul subway system had been under construction for 8 months, ever since the hegemony mining operations began on Earth. To the aliens above, it looked like humans were simply expanding their primitive transportation network. They had no idea what was really happening 300 feet below ground. The main laboratory stretched across what used to be an abandoned subway platform. Dozens of scientists worked at tables covered with alien technology. Every piece had been carefully collected from hegemony waste disposal sites, discarded equipment, and the occasional item that fell off transport vehicles. The aliens were so confident in human primitiveness that they barely bothered to secure their garbage. "Dr. Kang," called physicist Dr. Choi Min-ho from across the room. He was hunched over what appeared to be a broken hegemony data tablet. "I think I found something interesting." Yuna made her way through the busy laboratory, stepping around cables and equipment that would have looked like magic to humans just 2 years ago. Now her team was beginning to understand how it all worked. The aliens had made a crucial mistake in assuming humans were too stupid to learn from observation. "What do you have, Min-ho?" she asked, looking at the device in his hands. "This tablet stopped working 3 days ago when a Vorthak supervisor threw it in the trash," Min-ho explained. "But look at this." He pointed to a series of crystal formations inside the device. Their technology is based on harmonic frequencies. Each crystal resonates at a specific frequency to store and process information. Yuna leaned closer. She had suspected something like this for months. Alien technology seemed almost musical in the way it operated. "Can you replicate the frequency?" "Already did," Min-ho said with a grin. He pressed a small button on a device he had built using human electronics and a salvaged alien crystal. The broken tablet suddenly came to life, its display showing alien text and symbols. "Incredible," Yuna whispered. "How long did it take you to figure out the frequency?" "About 6 hours," Min-ho replied. "The interesting thing is that their systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they follow very predictable patterns. It's like they design everything using mathematical formulas, without any creative variation." This was exactly what Yuna had been hoping to confirm. Over the past months, her team had discovered that alien technology was advanced but rigid. Every device followed the same basic principles, used the same materials, and operated within the same parameters. It was elegant and efficient, but it was also completely predictable. "Dr. Kang," another voice called out. Engineer Sergeant Nam Hyejin approached carrying what looked like a hegemony communication device. "I've been studying their radio systems. You need to see this." Nam had been working with military communications before joining the secret research project. Her background in signal processing made her invaluable for understanding how the aliens coordinated their operations. "Their communication networks are quantum encrypted and operate faster than anything we ever imagined possible," Nam explained. "But they have a weakness. The encryption changes according to mathematical progressions that never vary. Once you know the pattern, you can predict every change." Yuna felt her pulse quicken. "Are you saying we could intercept their communications?" "More than that," Nam said. "We could potentially inject our own signals into their network. They would never expect it because they assume we don't understand the technology." Across the laboratory, a group of researchers was working on something even more ambitious. Dr. Park So-young had been leading an effort to understand hegemony energy systems. Her team had collected damaged power cells and energy conduits from various alien installations. "The energy systems are where we found their biggest blind spot," So-young reported during their weekly meeting. "They've mastered antimatter containment and quantum energy manipulation, but they design everything assuming perfect conditions and logical operation." "What do you mean?" Yuna asked. "Human technology is designed to work even when things go wrong," So-young explained. "We build in backup systems, safety margins, and redundancies because we expect equipment to fail or be used in unexpected ways. Alien technology assumes it will always be used exactly as designed." This was a crucial insight. Humans had learned to build technology that could handle chaos, mistakes, and creative misuse. Aliens had built technology that was perfect, but fragile when faced with unpredictable situations. Meanwhile, in a separate section of the facility, Colonel Jin Woo-sung was working with a different kind of problem. His team was studying hegemony military equipment and tactics. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. "Their weapons are incredibly powerful," Jin reported. "A single hegemony soldier could probably defeat 100 human soldiers in direct combat. Their armor can withstand anything we can throw at it, and their weapons can destroy our heaviest tanks with single shots." This information would have been depressing if not for what Jin had discovered next. But their tactical thinking is completely predictable, he continued. Every military operation follows the same patterns. They establish perimeters, advance in predetermined formations, and respond to threats using standard procedures that never change. Lieutenant Park Soo-jin, one of Jin's best tactical analysts, had spent weeks studying recordings of hegemony security operations. It's like they're following a textbook that never gets updated, she explained. They assume every enemy will respond logically to their actions. Sergeant Oh Tae-ho nodded in agreement. They've never faced an enemy that fights dirty or uses unconventional tactics. All their experience is with species that fight according to established rules of warfare. The most important discovery came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lee Sang-wook had been studying brain scan data from humans who worked in the hegemony mining operations. The aliens conducted regular medical checks to ensure their human workers remained healthy, and Dr. Lee had gained access to the scanning equipment. Human neural patterns are completely different from alien brain activity, he reported. Alien minds process information in linear logical sequences. Human brains make random connections, jump between unrelated concepts, and arrive at solutions through intuitive leaps that would be impossible for alien minds to follow. This was the key insight that changed everything. Humans weren't inferior because they were chaotic and unpredictable. They were different, and that difference was potentially a massive advantage. They can't understand us because they literally cannot think the way we think, Dr. Lee continued. Their brains are like incredibly advanced computers, but computers that can only run programs they've been specifically designed to handle. Yuna looked around the laboratory at her team of scientists, engineers, and military personnel. Each of them had been carefully selected not just for their expertise, but for their ability to think creatively and work outside established parameters. We need to accelerate our timeline, she announced. If human thinking is truly incomprehensible to alien minds, then we have a weapon they can't defend against. Over the following weeks, the underground laboratory became a hive of activity. Teams worked around the clock to develop technologies that combined alien science with human innovation. The results were devices that worked in ways that should have been impossible according to alien understanding of physics. Dr. Choi Min-ho created energy weapons that fired in random patterns instead of straight lines. Engineer Nam Hae-jin developed communication systems that could hide human signals inside alien data streams. Dr. Park So-young designed power sources that could operate efficiently even when damaged or misused. Most importantly, Colonel Jin Woo-sung's team began developing military tactics based on human unpredictability rather than logical strategy. They created battle plans that made no sense from a traditional military perspective, but would be absolutely devastating against an enemy that expected rational behavior. As the months passed, more underground facilities were established in cities around the world. The project expanded to include thousands of researchers, engineers, and military personnel, all working toward the same goal: understanding alien technology well enough to turn it against its creators. The aliens above continued their mining operations, completely unaware that their primitive human workers were quietly studying every piece of equipment, every procedure, and every weakness in their supposedly superior civilization. Dr. Kang Yoon-ah often stood in the main laboratory late at night, watching her team work by the light of hybrid human-alien devices. The hegemony had made a fundamental error in judgment. They had assumed that intelligence could only exist in one form: their form. Soon, they would learn that human intelligence was not inferior to alien logic. It was simply different, and that difference was about to change everything. The abandoned mining tunnel in the Australian outback stretched deep into the red earth, far from any hegemony facility. 5 years had passed since the aliens began their occupation of Earth, and to them, everything appeared perfectly normal. Human workers reported to their assigned locations each day, extracted resources under alien supervision, and returned to their homes each evening. They had no idea that thousands of those same humans were spending their nights building an arsenal that should not have existed. Dr. Choi Min-ho stood in the main weapons laboratory examining the latest prototype. The device looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. It combined alien energy technology with human engineering in ways that violated every principle of logical design. "The targeting system is completely insane," reported engineer Captain Yoon Jae-min, who had been testing the weapon for 3 weeks. Instead of calculating the most efficient path to the target, it fires energy bursts in seemingly random directions that somehow converge on the exact point you want to hit. Min-ho nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what they had been working toward. Alien defensive systems are designed to predict incoming fire based on logical trajectory calculations. They can't defend against weapons that don't follow logical patterns. The weapon itself looked crude compared to sleek hegemony designs. Where alien technology was smooth and elegant, this device was rough and improvised. But that was the point. It worked according to human thinking rather than alien logic. In another section of the facility, Dr. Park So-young was putting the finishing touches on their most ambitious project yet. The small spacecraft sitting in the converted cavern looked like someone had taken pieces from a dozen different alien vessels and welded them together in a pattern that made no engineering sense. "The flight computer is ready for testing," reported Lieutenant Commander Bae Jin-young, the former orbital mechanics specialist who had designed the ship's navigation system. "But I have to warn you, this thing flies like a drunk bird." "Perfect," So-young replied. "Hegemony fighters are programmed to intercept targets that follow predictable flight paths. A ship that flies like a drunk bird should be impossible for them to hit." The vessel used alien propulsion technology, but instead of the perfectly balanced thrust systems that alien ships employed, it used deliberately unbalanced engines that created random movement patterns. To an alien pilot, it would look like the ship was malfunctioning. In reality, every seemingly chaotic movement was carefully controlled by human pilots who had learned to think in 3 dimensions while managing controlled chaos. Captain Yoon Jae-min approached the ship with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had volunteered to be the test pilot, which meant he would be the first human to fly a combat vessel designed using hybrid technology. "The weapon systems are installed and functional," reported weapons specialist Sergeant Kim Tae-sung. "We've got the new energy cannons plus some surprises the aliens definitely won't expect." Those surprises included human innovations that alien minds would consider impossible. Missiles that could change their target mid-flight based on emotional, decision-making algorithms. Energy shields that became stronger when damaged instead of weaker. And most importantly, communication systems that could coordinate multiple ships using human intuition rather than computer calculations. 3 weeks later, everything was ready for the first field test. The target was a small hegemony outpost on the far side of the moon. It was lightly defended and relatively isolated, making it perfect for testing their new capabilities without triggering a massive alien response. Captain Yoon Jae-min piloted the prototype ship, accompanied by a crew of 5 specialists who had spent months training for this moment. The approach to the lunar outpost went exactly as planned, which meant it went nothing like any plan the aliens could have predicted. Instead of approaching from the logical vector that would provide the best tactical advantage, Jae-min flew the ship in a spiraling pattern that looked like he was barely in control. Hegemony sensors detected the approaching vessel, but their computers couldn't classify it as a threat. The ship's erratic movement patterns and strange energy signatures didn't match any known hostile craft. The automated defense systems continued their normal routines while alien personnel assumed they were observing some kind of mechanical failure. "Approaching target," Jae-min reported over the communication system. "Defense systems don't seem to be responding to our presence." "Confirmed," replied Dr. Kang Yoon-ah from the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. "Proceed with the HFY test." What happened next lasted exactly 47 seconds and changed everything. The human ship opened fire with weapons that behaved unlike anything in galactic military databases. Energy beams curved in impossible directions. Missiles split apart and attacked from multiple angles simultaneously, and the ship itself seemed to phase in and out of different dimensions. The hegemony outpost's defensive systems tried to respond, but their targeting computers couldn't lock onto a vessel that moved according to no logical pattern. Energy shields designed to deflect coherent attacks were useless against weapons that struck from random directions with varying intensities. More importantly, the human attack wasn't designed just to destroy the outpost. It was designed to send a message. When the shooting stopped, the hegemony facility was completely intact. Every alien inside was unharmed, but every piece of their technology had been systematically disabled in ways that would require weeks to repair. The humans had demonstrated that they could penetrate alien defenses whenever they chose to do so. As Jamin's ship departed, it transmitted a single message on all hegemony frequencies. The message was in perfect galactic standard, delivered in a calm, professional tone that made it even more unsettling. This was a demonstration. Your defenses are inadequate against human military capabilities. We recommend you reconsider your classification of our species. The message was signed simply, Earth Defense Force. News of the lunar incident spread through hegemony communication networks within hours. Military Coordinator Zeth Morrell convened an emergency meeting of senior commanders to analyze what had happened. The attack makes no tactical sense, reported Fleet Commander Corthalan. They could have destroyed the outpost completely, but they chose only to disable it. They revealed their capabilities without gaining any strategic advantage. Perhaps it was intended as a demonstration of their primitive emotions, suggested defense analyst Velkaran. Humans are known to make irrational decisions based on pride and anger. Zeth Morrell studied the recorded data from the attack. The human vessel's movement patterns were completely incomprehensible. No logical mind would fly a ship in such a chaotic manner, yet somehow every movement had been perfectly calculated to avoid defensive fire. Increase security at all installations, he finally ordered. This was likely an isolated incident using stolen alien technology, but we should take precautions until we understand what happened. The hegemony's response was exactly what human strategists had predicted. They increased their security measures but continued to view the attack as an anomaly rather than a genuine threat. Their logical minds couldn't process the possibility that primitive humans had developed capabilities that surpassed their own. Back on Earth, Colonel Seo Kyung-ho was coordinating the expansion of their hidden supply networks. The success of the lunar test had proven that human hybrid technology could work in real combat situations. Now it was time to mass-produce weapons and vessels for the larger operation that was coming. We need to establish supply caches throughout the solar system, he reported during the weekly command meeting. Every asteroid mining facility, every transport route, every alien installation needs to have human assets in position. Dr. Lim, Yejin's Psychological Warfare Division, had been studying alien behavioral patterns since the occupation began. Her analysis of the hegemony response to the lunar attack confirmed their predictions about alien thinking. They're treating this as a technical problem rather than a strategic threat, she explained. Their minds literally cannot conceive that a primitive species could develop superior military capabilities. They'll continue to underestimate us until it's too late. The months following the lunar test became a period of intense preparation. Underground facilities around the world worked at maximum capacity to produce the weapons and vehicles that would be needed for the next phase. Human volunteers underwent training in tactics that no military academy in the galaxy taught. Most importantly, they began coordinating with resistance cells that had formed in other star systems. The hegemony had occupied dozens of worlds over the centuries, and many of their subjects were eager to learn from humanity's example. Dr. Kang Yun-ah often walked through the bustling weapons laboratories late at night, watching her people work by the light of impossible machines. They had built an arsenal that could challenge the greatest military force in galactic history, using nothing more than salvaged alien garbage and human ingenuity. The universe had spent 5 years laughing at humanity's primitive nature. Soon, they would discover that sometimes primitive thinking could produce solutions that advanced civilizations could never imagine. The next phase would reveal just how dangerous underest. Admiral Kim Tae-wan stood in the command center of the hidden ship that had become humanity's mobile headquarters. The vessel looked like a converted mining barge from the outside, complete with fake damage and rust stains to make it appear worthless to alien scanners. Inside, it contained the most advanced hybrid technology humans had ever built. All teams report ready status, announced Communications Officer Lee Hyun-soo from her station. Around her, dozens of screens showed tactical displays of 12 different star systems. Each display contained red markers indicating hegemony installations and green markers showing human strike teams in position. 6 years of preparation had led to this moment. Operation Shepherd's Call would be humanity's announcement to the galaxy that the age of being cosmic pets was officially over. Confirm final target selection, Taewon ordered. His tactical officer, Commander Park So-young, highlighted the chosen installations on the main display. We have 12 facilities across 8 star systems, no military headquarters, no major population centers. All targets are research facilities, communication hubs, or supply depots. This was crucial to the plan. The goal wasn't to kill aliens or destroy their civilization. The goal was to shatter their sense of security and force them to acknowledge that humans were no longer helpless. Strike Team Alpha reports ready, came the voice of Captain Lee Hyun-soo from the Proxima Centauri system. Her team was positioned near a Kaloth research facility that had been studying human behavioral patterns. The irony was perfect. Strike Team Gamma in position, reported Major Choi Hoon-ki from the Vega system. His team had spent 3 months infiltrating the main hegemony communication hub by posing as maintenance workers. The aliens never questioned why humans would want to clean their equipment. One by one, all 12 teams confirmed their readiness. Each team included soldiers who had trained for years in unconventional warfare, using weapons and tactics that no alien military manual had ever considered. Execute Shepherd's Call, Admiral Taewon ordered. The first target was the Kaloth Research Facility. Captain Lee Hyun-soo led her team through the main entrance, walking calmly past security systems that were designed to detect hostile intentions. The problem was that the security computers couldn't understand human emotions well enough to identify hostile intentions when they were mixed with curiosity, determination, and what humans called righteous anger. The Kaloth Collective inside. The facility consisted of nearly 200 individuals who shared a single consciousness. They had spent years studying human irrationality, trying to understand why humans made decisions that defied logical analysis. Attention Kaloth Research Collective, Hyun-soo announced as her team spread throughout the facility. You have spent 6 years studying human behavioral patterns. Today you get to observe them directly. What followed was a demonstration of psychological warfare that the hive mind couldn't process. Instead of attacking the Kaloth directly, the humans began systematically dismantling their research in ways that required individual creative thinking to understand. Each piece of research equipment was disabled using a different method. Some were rewired to produce random data instead of accurate measurements. Others were reprogrammed to display human poetry instead of scientific analysis. The most sophisticated instruments were modified to play human music whenever they attempted to scan for emotional responses. The Kaloth Collective tried to respond, but their shared consciousness couldn't cope with multiple simultaneous problems that each required different creative solutions. Their perfect coordination became a weakness. When faced with chaos that demanded individual thinking, research facility secured, Hyun-soo reported, all Kaloth personnel unharmed but temporarily unable to function as a collective. They're experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in their species' history. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. At the Vega Communication Hub, Major Choi Hoon-ki's team revealed the most ambitious part of the operation. Instead of destroying the hub, they had turned it into humanity's personal broadcasting station. This is Earth Defense Force Command, Hoon-ki announced over every communication channel in the galaxy. We are transmitting on all frequencies to ensure this message reaches every species in the Hegemony Coalition. The message that followed was delivered by General Jang Min-ki, speaking from Earth's hidden command center. His words were translated into every known galactic language and broadcast simultaneously to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. For 6 years you have treated humanity as your pets, Min-ki said, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. You have laughed at our primitive nature. You have mocked our emotional decision-making. You have dismissed our potential because we fight among ourselves. The transmission showed images from each of the 12 simultaneous attacks, all occurring in perfect coordination despite being separated by dozens of light years. But you never asked yourself a simple question, Minky continued. If humans are so primitive, how did we manage to survive long enough to reach the stars? Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who won battles against impossible odds. We are not your pets. We are not your servants. We are your teachers, and class is now in session. The most devastating attack came from Lieutenant Colonel Bae Soo-jin's team at a Vorthak military training facility. The Vorthak prided themselves on their warrior culture and their advanced military technology. Their crystal plate armor was supposedly impenetrable, and their energy weapons could destroy anything humans could build. Soo-jin's team proved that advanced technology meant nothing if you couldn't predict how it would be used against you. Instead of fighting the Vorthak warriors directly, the humans challenged them to individual combat using traditional Vorthak rules. The aliens accepted, confident that their superior technology would make victory inevitable. What they experienced was their first encounter with human tactical thinking under pressure. The human fighters used weapons and armor that looked primitive, compared to Vorthak technology. But they fought using combinations of techniques that no logical mind would attempt. They sacrificed defensive positions to gain psychological advantages. They used their own equipment in ways that violated safety protocols to achieve tactical surprise. Most importantly, they fought with the kind of creative desperation that only came from a species that had learned to survive by refusing to accept defeat. The Vorthak warriors found themselves unable to predict human actions because humans kept doing things that made no tactical sense but somehow worked anyway. Their advanced combat computers couldn't calculate responses to opponents who regularly chose options that the computers had classified as impossible. Vorthak training facility secured, Soo-jin reported. Enemy warriors defeated in individual combat. No casualties on either side, but I think we may have given them an existential crisis about the nature of warfare. As reports came in from all 12 strike teams, the scope of humanity's achievement became clear. In less than 6 hours, using nothing but salvaged alien technology and human ingenuity, they had simultaneously struck at the heart of hegemony operations across multiple star systems. More importantly, they had done it without killing a single alien. Every attack had been precisely calibrated to demonstrate human capabilities, while proving that humans were not the savage primitives the galaxy believed them to be. The hegemony's response was immediate, and exactly what human strategists had predicted. Admiral Tae-won, reported Communications Officer Lee. We're detecting massive fleet movements throughout hegemony space. Looks like they're mobilizing everything they have. Tae-won nodded with grim satisfaction. How many ships? Conservative estimate puts it at over 2,000 vessels, sir. They're converging on the Sol system. Around the command center, human officers exchanged glances that mixed anticipation with determination. This was the moment they had been preparing for since the occupation began. Signal all units, Tae-won ordered. Phase 2 is now active. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you bring overwhelming force against an enemy that doesn't fight fair. The transmission ended, but its message continued to spread throughout galactic communication networks. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings who had spent years considering humans to be amusing primitives were forced to confront a new reality. Humanity had just announced that they were no longer willing to be the galaxy's pets. The universe was about to learn what 6 years of underestimating human potential had cost them. The real war was about to begin. Fleet Commander Korthalan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive hegemony dreadnought Cosmic Order, and felt absolutely confident about the battle ahead. Behind him stretched the largest military armada in galactic history, 2,000 ships carrying the combined might of a dozen species, all focused on crushing one small blue planet. Target analysis complete, reported his tactical officer. Earth's defensive capabilities remain primitive. They have approximately 300 spacecraft of various sizes, most converted from civilian vessels. Our forces outnumber them 7-1, with vastly superior technology. Corthalan nodded with satisfaction. The human stunt, 3 weeks, ago had been impressive in its coordination, but it had also revealed the limits of their capabilities. They could strike at lightly defended facilities using stealth and surprise, but they had never faced a real military force. "Open a communication channel to Earth," he ordered. "Let's give them one chance to surrender before we demonstrate the consequences of challenging the hegemony." The response came from Admiral Song Yebin, commander of the Earth Defense Force, Fleet. Her image appeared on the main screen, showing a middle-aged human woman in a simple military uniform that looked almost quaint compared to the advanced armor worn by hegemony officers. "Fleet Commander Corthalan," she said with a slight smile that somehow made the alien feel uneasy. "We've been expecting you. Thank you for bringing so many ships to our demonstration." "Your demonstration?" Corthalan's confidence wavered slightly. "Admiral Song, you are facing the largest military force ever assembled. I strongly recommend immediate surrender to minimize casualties." "Oh, there won't be any casualties," Song replied. "At least not the kind you're thinking of. You came here to teach us about superior firepower. We're here to teach you about superior thinking. Class begins now." The transmission ended, and immediately Corthalan's sensors began detecting something impossible. The 300 human ships weren't arranging themselves in any formation that appeared in hegemony military databases. Instead of forming defensive lines or attack formations, they were spreading out in what looked like random clusters throughout the solar system. "Sir," reported his sensor operator, "human vessels are not following any recognizable tactical pattern. Some appear to be civilian cargo ships, others look like modified mining equipment. Their fleet composition makes no strategic sense." This was exactly what Captain Ryu Dongjun had hoped to hear. He commanded a squadron of 12 ships that had once been ore haulers and passenger transports. Now they carried weapons that no military engineer would have approved, operated by crews that no military academy would have trained. "Remember the plan?" he told his pilots over the communication system. "We don't fight like a military. We fight like a swarm of angry insects that happen to have energy weapons." The battle began when hegemony forces opened fire with their most advanced weapons systems. Massive energy beams capable of destroying planets lanced out toward human positions, expecting to eliminate the primitive fleet in the opening salvo. What happened instead violated every principle of space combat that had been established over thousands of years. The human ships didn't try to avoid the incoming fire using evasive maneuvers or defensive screens. Instead, they used tactics that no sane military would attempt. Ships accelerated directly into weapons fire, using the energy from enemy beams to overcharge their own systems. Others deliberately positioned themselves to be hit by glancing blows. That damaged their hulls but somehow made their weapons more effective. "Impossible," whispered Corthalan's tactical officer. "They're using our own weapons to enhance their combat capabilities. Their ships are becoming more dangerous as they take damage." Captain Ryu's squadron demonstrated the new reality of human warfare. His ships attacked in patterns that changed every few seconds, using coordination methods that relied on human intuition rather than computer calculations. When hegemony targeting systems predicted his next move, he would suddenly do something completely different, not because it was tactically superior, but because it was tactically insane. "Cargo ship, Lucky Dragon to squadron," came a cheerful voice over the communication system. "I'm going to ram that dreadnought with a load of mining explosives." "Negative, Lucky Dragon," Ryu responded. "That's suicide and won't accomplish anything strategically useful." "Exactly," the pilot replied. "They'll never expect it." The cargo ship accelerated toward the hegemony dreadnought at maximum speed, broadcasting human music and what sounded like laughter. The alien crew watched in horror as the primitive vessel approached, unable to understand why anyone would sacrifice their life for no tactical gain. At the last moment, the cargo ship exploded in a brilliant flash that did minimal damage to the dreadnought's shields. But the explosion had been precisely positioned to create an electromagnetic pulse that disabled the ship's targeting computers for 37 seconds. In those 37 seconds, 6 other human ships appeared from impossible angles and disabled. The dreadnought's main weapons using coordinated attacks that no computer could have calculated. Similar scenes played out throughout the solar system. Human ships fought using combinations of courage, creativity, and calculated chaos that overwhelmed alien tactical computers. They sacrificed valuable equipment for psychological advantages. They used their own destroyed vessels as weapons. They coordinated attacks using emotional decisions that no logical analysis could predict. Colonel Kim Suho's ground forces provided the most shocking demonstration of human military thinking. When hegemony troops landed on Earth expecting to face conventional resistance, they encountered something their training had never prepared them for. Human soldiers who fought as individuals while somehow maintaining perfect coordination. Warriors who used the aliens' own advanced equipment against them by operating it in ways that violated every safety protocol. Defenders who turned entire cities into weapons by using civilian infrastructure in combinations that no military engineer would consider. "This is impossible," reported Hegemony Ground Commander Velthak. "Human soldiers are using our own technology to create tactical advantages we never designed it for. They're turning our weapons into tools, our tools into weapons, and their own damaged equipment into things that shouldn't exist." The most devastating example came when Dr. Park Hae-jin's innovation teams revealed their ultimate surprise. Human technicians had learned to interface directly with alien technology during combat, taking control of hegemony systems from the inside. "Fleet Commander," his communications officer reported, with barely controlled panic. "Our own ships are turning against us. Humans are somehow gaining control of our vessels and using them to attack our remaining forces." Korthalan watched in growing horror as his overwhelming technological advantage became a liability. Every advanced system his fleet possessed was being turned against him by opponents who refused to use it logically. The final moment of the battle came when Admiral Song's flagship, a converted research vessel called Curiosity, approached Korthalan's dreadnought, broadcasting a single message. "Fleet Commander Korthalan, this is Admiral Song. Your fleet is defeated. Your ships are disabled. Your ground forces are surrounded. But since this was a teaching demonstration rather than a war of conquest, we're prepared to offer terms." "Terms?" Korthalan could barely speak. His massive fleet had been systematically dismantled by opponents using inferior technology and impossible tactics. "Simple terms," Song replied. "You acknowledge that humanity is not a primitive species that needs protection. You return to the hegemony and inform them that Earth is no longer available for resource extraction. And you help us establish proper diplomatic relations between human and alien civilizations." Around the solar system, 2,000 hegemony vessels floated disabled but intact, their crews unharmed but thoroughly defeated. Not a single ship had been destroyed, but every one had been rendered helpless by opponents who fought according to rules that didn't exist in any military manual. "How?" Korthalan finally asked. "How did you defeat superior numbers and technology?" "Because you brought a computer to a creativity fight," Song answered. "Your technology is more advanced than ours, but it's designed by minds that think in straight lines. Human minds don't think in straight lines. We think in spirals, loops, and directions that don't have names yet." As hegemony commanders throughout the fleet began reporting their situations, the scope of their defeat became clear. They had been outfought by opponents who were technologically inferior, but mentally incomprehensible. The humans had won, not through superior firepower, but through superior imagination. "Admiral Song," Korthalan said quietly, "I accept your terms. But I need to understand something. Why didn't you destroy our fleet when you had the chance?" Song's image smiled again, and this time, Korthalan understood that the expression wasn't threatening. It was genuinely friendly. "Because the point of this lesson wasn't to prove humans can destroy things, Fleet Commander. It was to prove that we can build things, create things, and protect things in ways you never imagined. Destruction is easy. What we did today was much harder." The transmission ended, leaving Korthalan alone with the realization that everything the hegemony believed about intelligence, warfare, and Ambassador Lee Seung-woo walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council station, noting how different the atmosphere felt compared to 6 months ago. The same alien representatives were present, but the casual arrogance that had once filled these halls had been replaced by something else, respectful curiosity mixed with cautious fascination. The emergency session had been called after Fleet Commander Cortalan submitted his report about the Battle of Sol. Every major species in the Hegemony Coalition wanted to understand how humans had achieved the impossible, defeating a technologically superior force without destroying it. Ambassador Lee, Council Speaker Veltaran greeted him at the entrance to the main chamber. The Althari's tone was completely different from their first meeting 7 years ago. Thank you for accepting our invitation to address the Council. Thank you for extending it, Shengwu replied diplomatically. I understand there are questions about recent events. Questions? Veltaran repeated with what might have been a laugh. Ambassador, your species has fundamentally challenged our understanding of intelligence itself. We have many questions. The chamber fell silent as Shengwu took his position at the central podium. The same floating platforms held the same alien representatives, but their body language was entirely different. The Vorthak crystals showed colors of deep respect rather than amusement. The Keloth collective maintained perfect stillness that indicated focused attention. Even the Namari had adjusted their environmental suits to show formal acknowledgement. Honored representatives, Shengwu began. Humanity comes before this council not as conquerors but as partners. We have demonstrated our capabilities not to threaten your civilizations, but to establish our place as equals in the galactic community. Representative Corthanel stepped forward, his crystal plates showing deep blue patterns that indicated serious contemplation. Ambassador Lee, our military analysts have studied the recordings from your recent conflict. We cannot understand how your tactics succeeded. Your strategies violated every principle of logical warfare. That's exactly the point, Shengwu replied. Human thinking doesn't follow the same patterns as other species. We don't consider this a weakness. We consider it our greatest strength. But how can chaotic thinking produce superior results? Asked Namari Representative Zephi. Logic dictates that random decisions should produce random outcomes. Shengwu gestured to a holographic display that showed brain scan comparisons between humans and various alien species. Dr. Shin Jung-woo had prepared this presentation specifically for this moment. Human neural patterns are indeed chaotic compared to other species, he explained. But that chaos isn't random. It's creative. We make connections between unrelated concepts. We find solutions that logic would dismiss as impossible. We adapt to changing situations faster than any computer can calculate responses. The Keloth collective spoke in unison, their voice carrying a note of what sounded like wonder. Our research, teams who experienced your psychological warfare report that individual consciousness is fascinating. We had never considered that separation of thought could enhance problem-solving rather than hinder it. This was the breakthrough that Dr. Lim Yejin's psychological research teams had hoped for. The aliens weren't just acknowledging human capabilities. They were beginning to understand that different types of thinking could be valuable. We propose a new model of galactic cooperation, Shengwu continued. Instead of assuming that all intelligence must work the same way, we embrace the advantages that come from different approaches to problem-solving. President Yang Min-young's recorded message began playing on the chamber's main display. She spoke from the newly constructed New Geneva facility on Earth, which had become humanity's center for interstellar diplomatic relations. The hegemony has achieved remarkable things through logical cooperation and advanced technology, Yang said. Humanity doesn't want to replace your achievements. We want to enhance them by adding creative thinking to logical planning. Examples began appearing on displays throughout the chamber. Human artists had begun collaborating with alien scientists to create works that neither species could have imagined alone. Human engineers worked with alien technicians to design systems that were both elegantly logical and creatively adaptable. Most importantly, human diplomats were helping to resolve conflicts between alien species by finding solutions that satisfied needs no one had realized existed. The planet Kepler 442b provides an excellent example, Shengwu explained. The Vorthak and Keloth had been disputing mining rights there for 3 centuries. Traditional hegemony arbitration focused on logical resource allocation. Human mediators suggested dividing the planet based on what each species actually needed rather than what they thought they wanted. The result had been revolutionary. Instead of fighting over the same mineral deposits, the Vorthak had gained access to crystal formations they could use for their technology, while the Keloth Collective had obtained rare compounds that enhanced their neural connections. Both species had ended up with more value than they would have gained from winning the original dispute. Human thinking doesn't just solve problems differently, added Dr. Park Hae-jin via holographic transmission. It identifies problems that logical thinking doesn't recognize as problems, and it finds opportunities that logical analysis would classify as impossible. Council Speaker Veltarin raised one of his arms for attention. Ambassador Lee, the Council has prepared a formal proposal for humanity's integration into galactic society. We offer full membership with voting rights, access to all hegemony technologies, and partnership status in ongoing research projects. Xiongwu nodded respectfully. Humanity accepts, with one modification to the standard membership terms. What modification? Veltarin asked. We want to establish the Galactic Creative Thinking Institute, Xiongwu replied. A facility where representatives from all species can learn to think in non-logical ways, not to replace logical thinking but to supplement it. The chamber buzzed with alien conversations in dozens of languages. The concept was unprecedented. No species had ever suggested that other species should learn to think differently, rather than simply sharing their existing knowledge. Representative Corthanel's crystal plates showed bright yellow patterns indicating excitement. You mean humans would teach other species to think like humans? Not exactly, Xiongwu corrected. We would teach other species to think creatively within their own mental frameworks. A Vorthak who thinks creatively is different from a human who thinks creatively, but both are valuable. 6 months later, Commander Bei Su-jin stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel, New Horizons, as it approached the edge of the galaxy. Her crew included representatives from every major species, all working together using a combination of logical analysis and creative problem-solving. Navigation report, she requested. We're approaching the target coordinates, reported Vorthak navigator Korthjin. His crystal plates showed the steady blue patterns that indicated careful logical analysis, combined with occasional flashes of green that meant he was considering creative alternatives to standard procedures. Sensor analysis complete, added Keloth Collective Representative Unit 47. The collective had learned to assign individual units to work with mixed crews, maintaining their group consciousness while allowing for individual creative input. Unknown energy signatures detected. Patterns suggest intelligent origin, but do not match any known technology. This was exactly what they had hoped to find. The mission to explore beyond the galaxy's edge was intended to test whether human-inspired creative thinking could help galactic civilization handle completely unprecedented situations. Recommendations? Su-jin asked. Logical analysis suggests maintaining safe distance and conducting remote observations, Unit 47 reported. Creative analysis suggests direct approach with communication attempts, Korthjin added, his plates flashing the green patterns he had learned to associate with human-inspired thinking. Both approaches have merit, Su-jin decided. We'll conduct remote observations while simultaneously preparing for direct contact. If logical analysis indicates safety, we'll proceed with creative contact protocols. The combination of approaches proved perfect when they discovered an ancient automated probe from a civilization that had existed millions of years before any current galactic species. Logical analysis helped them understand its technology, while creative thinking helped them realize that it was trying to communicate using mathematical art rather than conventional signals. Back on Earth, Professor Kim Ji-won stood in front of her mixed-species classroom in the New Geneva facility. Her students included young representatives from dozens of worlds, all learning to think in ways their species had never considered before. Today's lesson is about impossible solutions, she announced. Can anyone give me an example of something that logic says can't work but actually does? A young Vorthak student raised one crystalline appendage. Humans flying ships in chaotic patterns during combat. Logic says this should make them easier targets, but it actually makes them harder to hit. Excellent example, Kim replied. And why does it work? A Koloth collective member answered. Because the enemy's logical systems cannot predict illogical behavior, so the Illogica